Looking for your daily fix of sports?
How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, live today on Tuesday, June the 11th, to talk some more NFL with you guys here today. A lot of newness, starting with mandatory minicamp starting, and also learning some new things as you do throughout the offseason. We're going to start off today talking about the former New England Patriots running back Damien Harris going at his former coach Bill Belichick and what he had to say about how Bill Belichick was responsible for that collapse in 2022. Then we move on to more mandatory minicamp discussions. The rest of the NFL began their portion of minicamp this week. We're going to get into some storylines that have to do with some of those teams starting up this week, and also some more running back rankings, this time in the NFC South, talking Buccaneers, Saints, Falcons, and also the Panthers, and ranking their running back groups in a later segment. So stick around, those stories and much more coming up on today's episode. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. And also, if you have any questions or comments, use the tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net. By using that link you see on your screen, I'm able to see your question or comment on my screen, and that way read it on air and get your guys' thoughts or perspective on anything I have to say or on any of the topics on today's show. It's a massive help for this show as well as the network, so please, if you would, use the tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net. But we can start off with the first segment, like I mentioned before. Damien Harris talking about Bill Belichick and the transitional period, really still the transitional period between the New England Patriots and this new New England Patriots team that we see now. 2022 was sort of the bad tail end of the last era, the last, glorious era of the New England Patriots. Then from then on, it sort of dipped and sort of declined from then on, and now we find ourselves hopefully on the incline and hopefully on the way back up with a new coach, new scheme, new players coming in, new quarterback. Hopefully for the Patriots it is turning upside, but for right now we're going to focus in on 2022, and former running back of the New England Patriots, Damien Harris, announced before his retirement in March, and throughout the offseason he appeared on various podcasts, one of them being the Athletic Football Show recently, and talked about sort of the negative sides of playing with Bill Belichick and some things that he might not have liked during his time there. He wanted to preface before he said anything that, of course, he loved playing for Bill. He knew what Bill stood for. He had success with everything, so he obviously had the respect for him. But there were certain things that he really didn't appreciate during that 2022 year. Really, Damien Harris was not a fan of the fact of Bill Belichick's sort of power dynamic, how he handled some situations and how he handled certain critiques or suggestions maybe from players and how he responded to it. One of the quotes Damien Harris had on the show was, "If anybody had anything to say about it, it was met with a very, very quick, swift, shut the F up. I know what I'm doing and that's it." Also, that in it of itself made Harris feel like he couldn't really critique anything and really couldn't address anything on his mind if he disagreed with anything. It was either, just based on the quote he used, either Bill's way or the highway most of the time, and that's how Bill Belichick sort of ran his time there in New England, or at least in this instance. And then really most of the comments on this podcast were centered around the 2022 offense and how it was run by Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. And the players, including Damien Harris, just sort of felt that these two were not really qualified at this moment to lead them into, a new era. After Josh McDaniels moved on and he found himself another job, these two sort of stepped in. And that was also another thing with Bill Belichick. It always seemed like he hired from within or hired people of his trust and confidence. You saw it with, obviously, these two. There was also Josh McDaniels was a part of it. It always seemed to be these three main guys that were always following Bill around. It was always them, the connections that they had on a personal level, I'm sure, but also on the football field. And again, they just felt, Damien Harris and the players, most of them, that these two really weren't qualified enough to run this offense compared to what Josh McDaniels just had done, especially with Mac Jones. Now to see these two come in, it did produce a pretty steep decline for not only Mac Jones, but for the entire team that year. And further on, Damien Harris commented A few more things to say on that aspect, just basically mentioning some more on the two coaches. In an instance in OTAs, he said, I remember OTAs, minicamp, sitting around talking amongst each other, being like, yo, how are we going to tell Bill that this stuff ain't working? I think that it is very obvious for a long time, and also said that they knew during training camp leading up throughout the preseason and everything like that before their first game that they really had no confidence in this offense and no just belief that this could ever work with some of the things that Matt Patricia and Joe Judge were trying to teach them, and even said that it got to a point where the leaders on this team tried to meet with the coaches, tried to figure something out, a compromise to get everybody at least on the same page and at least content with what they were going to produce out there on the field. But none of the coaches listened, and it got a little bit toxic there in some points where Damien Harris mentioned that respect level a little bit sort of dipped with some players, openly mocking some coaches around the facility too, and also mentioning some players just poking fun of the coaches and not really having that level of respect really you would expect with an NFL player to his coaches if you're content with everything that's going on. That was sort of lacking, and that you could really see how that environment, that relationship you have with your coaches just definitely is not the way you want to start off a season, and why 2022 looked as bad as it did for the New England Patriots. So you get to the question really stemming from Bill Belichick. Obviously, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge have a big part to do with all of this, but Bill Belichick specifically, there's been a lot of talk about him, why he didn't get a coaching job, and why some organizations, some leaders in some organizations didn't particularly want or feel that Bill Belichick was the right fit for their team. And it just makes me think, is it more Bill Belichick's plan, his ability to coach still, or is it his maybe an ability to evolve and grow and actually change some of his stuff that Damien Harris alluded to, mentioning that every answer was really just met with, stop talking, this is my way, we're going to do it like this. If that is to be the case, and it is that blunt of a response, with Bill Belichick, I think it is hard to turn away from it because you've been successful for so long, probably the most successful coach in NFL history. You coached one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback ever. How could you now think that your way is not going to work? It's hard to really peel away from that and think, I have to change something. If it's worked for so long, don't fix it if it's not broken, sort of thing. With Bill Belichick, it is hard to peel away from that and just try and change your methods if it's worked for so long. But at the same time, I think you also do have to read the room, read the writing on the wall, however you want to say it, and think of ways to sort of change some things if your players, if you get a good amount of players coming in and telling you that this isn't working, or they'd rather do this, or maybe they think this would work, then you could start to experiment with some things. But I think that was really the biggest failure with Bill Belichick towards the end. It was just his inability to do things differently. He always wanted to do things his way. In my estimation, just from an outsider looking in, that's how it appeared to me. And Damien Harris sort of backed it up with some of the quotes he made. And now, does this mean Bill Belichick isn't qualified to coach anymore? I don't think so. I think he could coach in some teams right now. If you look at some that I wrote down here, the Jets come to mind, the Buffalo Bills, also the Giants, the Chicago Bears even, the Dallas Cowboys, maybe Philadelphia. They're in a good spot right now. They're loaded, so I don't think they'd have a bad season to fire a coach. But those five that I mentioned previously, I think have a good opportunity to change coaches at some point this season, or maybe next offseason as well. If you look at the Jets, very much riding a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They have a lot of eyeballs on them. They're on prime time for every other week for the first 8 to 9 weeks. So if things go wrong, it's certainly going to get loud there. And Robert Saleh, he has been there for a couple years now. That could be a situation. Aaron Rodgers even said it, if they don't perform well, most of them are probably out of there. So I don't see why Bill Belichick couldn't have that as an opportunity. Maybe in the AFC East, you don't want to play against the Patriots, okay. But that could be a situation that could fit him. The Buffalo Bills, again, same division, but if they do pretty poorly with a new offense and it just doesn't click, McDermott could be gone, and that could be another opening. The Giants, he has those personal connections with the Giants, but I don't think it does meet up too much. It is an opportunity, but the Giants are sort of getting younger, wanting to rebuild. I don't know if Bill Belichick would want to be there that long, but that is another option. The Chicago Bears is probably the most intriguing one just because they have a very solid team right now, a very young quarterback that is a generational talent to learn from one of the best coaches in the NFL and just in NFL history. I think would be a great match for the Bears and Caleb Williams. Again, Matt Eberflus, a defensive-minded coach, sort of like Bill Belichick, so you could take it with a grain of salt there if you want Bill Belichick in there and consider all your options, but that is another spot. And then the Cowboys, of course, Mike McCarthy is in the last year of his deal. You know, you could get better with Bill Belichick. It is in a dicey situation as well with the contracts and the salary situation that they're dealing with, but they are options out there. Bill Belichick can certainly improve over some of these guys in these positions. I believe so. I think he'll get a job next season. I truly do. I think this is just 1 year where everyone's sort of going to come to the realization that one of the best coaches in NFL history is just sitting there. It's going to get enticing to reach out to him, I'm sure, during the season if things are going bad. And we're definitely going to hear more about this as we go on. But that'll do it for this segment of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk about some more mandatory minicamp storylines. The rest of the NFL started theirs this week. We're going to point out some things to look out for with certain teams when we return. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on their face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows with 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Moving right along with the rest of the show and into the second segment, mandatory minicamp is still going on around the NFL. Last week, 10 teams started their mandatory minicamp, 3 days of practice, and they ended it, of course, in that week. Now, the other 22 teams started theirs and will conclude theirs at the end of this week. And then you get into the break before training camp, and then it starts to really pick up more. You get the pads on, you get into preseason. The season is getting a little bit closer and closer, a lot faster than many people think. And it is exciting with mandatory minicamp. I know it's still a short period, but you do get to see a little bit more intensity, I feel like, and that's something I really enjoy. Each team is required to have 3 days of practices, like I mentioned. And just a quick note before I start on the teams I wanted to talk about, the Detroit Lions were one of those teams that had their mandatory minicamp last week, as I talked about it, and they overdid it a little bit. You can't go too much towards the contact side of things. You are limited to how much contact you face during these mandatory minicamps, obviously, because you don't have the pads to really go all out. The NFL punished them for maybe going a little bit past those borders, and they had their mandatory minicamp last week, and they were going to have some voluntary workouts this week, but they were rescinded away from one of those practices, so they had one of theirs taken away, and now they had one less to do because of that. And it is funny because of the story and how it relates to the Lions, just because it's Dan Campbell. You know how intense he is if you've seen any games and have seen any of his press conferences. I just thought it was something surprising, but also not surprising when you have the full context of who Dan Campbell is and who the Detroit Lions are as well. But in saying that, I will get into now this segment and bringing up some of the teams I wanted to focus in on here truly, and some storylines that have to do with some of them heading into this mandatory minicamp period. The first one being the Pittsburgh Steelers. They started theirs actually today. Some teams started theirs yesterday, but the Steelers began today. probably just concluded in about an hour or two ago, and the biggest storyline with them is obviously the quarterback battle. It finally starts to pick up a little bit more steam here just because you are getting that extra bit of competitive edge out there, playing 11 on 11, 7 on 7s. The defense is out there. It's mandatory, so you have pretty much everybody there as well. You're not just running it against guys that typically wouldn't be in that rotation. And at the beginning of this entire thing, it always was said that this was Russell Wilson's job. More towards the middle of June, towards the end of June, and now hopefully into training camp as we inch closer and closer to that. It's starting to seem like more and more this is going to be a real close battle and maybe not so much of an edge over for Russell Wilson as originally intended. And it isn't sunshine and roses either for Justin Fields. So at the beginning to say that Russell Wilson had that much edge over him, I think it was a little bit questionable, but now I really do believe it, that this will be more of a competition than most people will want to realize. And Justin Fields will certainly get some reps with the ones over the course of mandatory minicamp perhaps, or more so into training camp. But this is going to be a really interesting battle to watch. Justin Fields obviously has the youth factor on his side. Russell Wilson has the experience. Very similar. Russell Wilson, once he was younger, similar to Justin Fields, that running aspect. Now, a little bit slower, maybe not as mobile, but the arm is still there. Justin Fields has been a little bit questionable with his accuracy and the arm aspect of his profile. So it will be very notable and very interesting to watch these two and how this battle unfolds over the next week and then into training camp, and who really does the extra bit to gain the edge over the other one. But that's the first one. Then we can jump into the second one and start talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's new identity for this team, the offense really focusing in on them. Justin Herbert, all of his receivers left. All of his receivers walked out the door, and now you are still this franchise quarterback, very talented guy. The arm talent is there. You have the physical build and everything, but you don't really have the guys out there to throw it to with the utmost confidence that they're going to produce something special about it. You have to regain that trust again with a Quentin Johnson, a Ladd McConkey, who they just drafted in the NFL draft. So that process, how it all unfolds, will be certainly interesting to watch. And also just this new identity with Jim Harbaugh bringing over that tough, punch you in the face sort of mentality that he had in Michigan. You saw it with how they're building their team now. Went offensive line with the 5th overall pick, and now you bring in Gus Edwards, you bring in J.K. Dobbins. You're trying to build this team from the inside out, really filling out those trenches, really making both offense and defensive lines your strengths, and then you could build off of that through play action and opening up the passing game that way. It is logical now because obviously you gave up all your weapons, all of your explosive players, but how this all unfolds and how Justin Herbert sort of adapts to it, because up until this point he has been this gunslinger, winning the games with his arms, throwing it about 30 times at least per game. Now he's going to have to do a little bit less, and how he manages that and still, find some success with the throws he has. It might dip a little bit in quantity, but the quality aspect of it should still be there. And I'm very interested to see how this new team looks. Very much going away from the recent trend of throwing it all over the field like the NFL likes to produce and advertise out there for their game. But regardless, interesting team there to follow. But moving on to the next team, we have the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, obviously selected 2nd overall, and just how he adapts to the NFL and how he regains and sort of learns Cliff Kingsbury's offense and how quickly he does it as well, because I'm penciling him in to be the starter. I know they have Marcus Mariota there, and to my knowledge, they haven't announced Jaden Daniels as the out-and-out starter like the Chicago Bears did with Caleb Williams. So technically there is something there to still watch, but I expect Jaden Daniels to start, and how quickly he learns this offense will be huge because, again, they didn't address the wide receiver position, which I would have loved that they did. I love Terry McLaurin. I think he's a great number 1 option for them. Then you have Jahan Dotson, but I still feel that they needed one extra guy in there to provide some more trust for Jaden Daniels. He has all the physical abilities. Of course, he can escape and extend plays like that, but you don't really want him doing that too much to take those extra hits if you don't have to. The offensive line is still a little bit shaky, but he is the key. He is the catalyst for everything that this offense can be. So how quickly he masters it will be something to take note of as we go on through mandatory minicamp. Then we jump into another team trying to learn a new offense with a very experienced quarterback now in Josh Allen. A lot of new wide receivers in there. Matt Collins, Keon Coleman, really highlight some of the new ones. Curtis Samuel as well. A lot of guys haven't caught passes from Josh Allen, so that baby step sort of instruction there that they're going to have to get over will be the beginning process of this, but how their offense maybe changes a little bit. Maybe they use the tight ends even more. Maybe James Cook becomes an even more prominent figure, maybe in the passing game now, more than ever in his third year. I'm expecting them to rely on the running game a lot more. James Cook looked solid last year, and also Josh Allen using his legs as well. He isn't shy about taking hits. He embraces them, and he even looks for them at certain times. He has the very intimidating build for such a massive quarterback. So how they adapt their offense, which receivers will step up during any point of the season, who does it early, who does it maybe towards the playoffs, I think will be just as significant in either situation. And who becomes Josh Allen's number one go-to guy. It could still be a tight end. Dalton Kincaid had a very good rookie season last year, so it could be him. But the receivers are definitely going to have to play a role at some point this season. I'm interested to see who that guy is and who Josh Allen puts the most trust in as we go on in the regular season. But that's the Buffalo Bills. Then we move on, stay in the same division with the New York Jets in a Tory minicamp. Hassan Reddick looking for a new contract and how that whole situation works itself out. Some reports even mentioned that Robert Saleh and Hassan Reddick have had very minimal conversations with one another, and the team doesn't really know too much about what's going through Hassan Reddick's mind. Obviously, they know he wants a new contract, but much more hasn't been said from there. Not how you'd want to start a relationship for one of your premier pass rushers. And Aaron Rodgers, again, missed mandatory minicamp today for an unexcused reason. Robert Saleh said that it was something that was important to him, so he had to miss it today. He will end up being fined for it, and that will be something to watch. I'm sure he'll be back soon. It's not like he's going to miss the entire minicamp. At least I hope he doesn't. But I'm sure the media is going to ask him about it. I doubt he gives a legit answer, but that's something to watch there. Him popping in and out, for some things that he finds value in. Maybe over football, and then Hassan Reddick as well. Two crucial pieces to your puzzle. You don't want them missing too much time. Then also the chemistry aspect of it. That goes hand in hand with this. Hassan Reddick especially coming in, being a new player, you'd want to get him as many reps as possible, learning your schemes, and also just the offensive line chemistry working back there, how the defense works with all their pieces there is going to be massive. You don't want one piece missing out of the entire thing, throwing off the entire rhythm. So the quicker they get back, the more beneficial it will be for the New York Jets. But those are two things to sort of watch out here as we move on. The second to last team I'll get to is the Atlanta Falcons. Sort of similar, new scheme, and also Michael Penix's development. Has had some up and downs throughout the voluntary workouts, through OTAs, and the phase 1 and phase 2 portions of the off season. But he is sort of getting better. You are seeing those growing pains there with Michael Penix and how he develops. I'm sure Kirk Cousins is still penciled in to be the starter, but how quickly Michael Penix develops and gets his accuracy a little bit more under control there for this offense will be something to watch. It's exciting to have Michael Penix and seeing him back there and just going along with all those young weapons. He still has a way to go, but watching his development will be huge. And also just how they play off of this new scheme now with a new offensive coordinator, new head coach. Last year, Arthur Smith depended a lot on the running game. The hype around this team now is that they will finally use Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and get the ball to these weapons as they would have so long been wanting to do for the longest of times. Of course, you don't want to go too far away from Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, who I think is a great back, but how they find that balance, where they find their true success and identity. And then the last team I will mention is the not the Chicago Bears, that should say the Denver Broncos, but I have the pictures up there. Zach Wilson and Bo Nix really starting to separate themselves in the quarterback competition. You see Jared Stidham there in the back as well. He's also technically competing for that spot, but I think up until this point, it has been all about Zach Wilson and Bo Nix. Both of them getting praised by the media and Sean Payton as well. Zach Wilson obviously coming from that very bad situation with the New York Jets and never really developing into the number 2 overall prospect that he was. Now he gets a new opportunity, still at a very young age, at 24, 25 years old. It is funny just because Bo Nix, his first year in the NFL, he's also 25, 24 years old, and we have seen some more maturity from him, and that's something Sean Payton likes and has pointed out so far. So these two are really starting to, get into the same lane and try to battle each other for the starting quarterback position. How and who really gets that lead heading into training camp, I think, will be huge. And who starts off as the starter at training camp will also be something to watch. But those are just some of the teams I picked out. Some of the more interesting storylines I felt will be something to watch during this week of mandatory minicamp. But that'll do it for that segment. And when we return, we're going to get into some more running back rankings, this time in the NFC South, touching on some of the teams I pointed out just now in this segment and how they fall in my power rankings for the running backs in this division. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.
Talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Continuing on with the show and talking about the running back rankings now in this segment, we're going to stop at the NFC South and go over some of the running backs there that will make a big name for themselves in this coming year. Really starting off with the number 4 overall team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On my list, the Bucs are a little bit funny just because I felt that I saw a lot more production out of them in 2023. Not only because they won the division, but the jump you saw from Rachaad White there, who you see on the left side of your screen. He jumped a lot and basically doubled his production from his rookie year. He went from about 480 yards to about 990. 1 touchdown in his rookie year to 6. And then he got almost double the amount of carries from 129 to 272 in 2023. But if you look at them as a team and just really only depending on Rachaad White, they were last in total rushing yards at only 1,509 and also last in total yards per game at around 88 yards per game rushing. It isn't too great just based on the amount of numbers that you have, enough options at that position to really build a great and solid group at the running back position. Then you get to Chase Edmonds, who you see there on your right, and he does provide a little bit more in the passing game just from what you saw with the Cardinals, but he didn't have a great first year in Tampa Bay. Missed about 4 games, only had 49 carries, 176 yards, 14 receptions, and 81 yards. So the aspect of the game where you thought he'd excel, he really didn't do much in that part of the game. So they're just going to have to depend on Rachaad White even more, and you hope to see another jump from him to sort of help out this group and the production you get from that, because I know they have great receiving options and a great passing game with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and bringing in Sterling Shepard, drafting Jalen McMillan. But you're going to have to run the ball at certain points, especially once we get into December and January. If they could add another piece here, I think will be huge for them. But right now, they fill out the last spot in my rankings. Then you get into the 3rd overall team, the Carolina Panthers. They have more numbers, obviously, from what you see there on your screen. Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, and Jonathan Brooks, who they drafted in this year's draft. about middle of the pack last year as a group in their production that they put out there against other teams. 104 yards per game and about 1,769 total yards rushing. Most people probably thought that Miles Sanders there in the middle was probably going to be the starting running back for this Carolina Panthers team, but much like their overall season, a lot of things switched up, and a lot of things really just underperformed, and so did Miles Sanders. He sort of got exceeded and surpassed by Chuba Hubbard there about halfway through the season, and from that point on, Chuba Hubbard just doubled the amount of production that you saw from Miles Sanders to in really much every category to help out this offense as much as you could. And also with Bryce Young, going through some growing pains and the offense not having enough weapons really at the end of the day. Now, you bring in still these two running backs. You draft Jonathan Brooks, who was probably the best running back in the entire draft. Now you have three pretty solid options to cycle through if you really want to help Bryce Young and bring this running game up to complement him so he doesn't just have to throw it all game and have the potential of being sacked multiple times a game like we saw last year. I think that'll certainly help. They obviously addressed the offensive line and brought in Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette as receiving options with Dave Canales now as their head coach. It's looking a bit more promising. They have more options to go to than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that's why they edge them out here just a little bit. Then at the number 2, it was pretty close, honestly. I was very close to putting the Panthers 2. As much of a surprise as that would have been to a lot of you, I assume. But I have the Saints. I have the Saints at number 2 because they have about the same amount of options, but Alvin Kamara just really pushes them over the edge. Alvin Kamara, paid as one of the best running backs in the league and produces as one of the best running backs in the league. One of the more dynamic and just slippery guys, very elusive guy to get on the ground. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard rushing year at all yet in the NFL, but he's always around 1,200 to 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Does a lot in the passing game. The Saints offense certainly missed him last year when he was dealing with his suspension, but once he returned, he produced at that same level. But this offense still needs a little bit more, definitely on the receiving side of it. This running game does help him out quite a bit with Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams, chipping in there from time to time. I would like to see more from them. It seems like Taysom Hill, the hype, the excitement around him from him coming in, the plays drawn up for him sort of have died down a little bit. It seems just like defenses know what to expect and know how to game plan around it a little bit more. So his production has gone down a little bit. I was a little disappointed also how they used Jamal Williams. He, if I'm not mistaken, was the touchdown leader just 2 seasons ago, and then with the Saints, didn't really get as much love there and just as much attention from this offense. I would like him to sort of contribute a little bit more to the running game because Kamara can't just do it all himself. He has great talent and endless ability to create something out of nothing, but he definitely needs help out there. These two can certainly produce, I think, more than they have been over the last year or so, and I know the O-line still has some doubts, some questionable spots there at left tackle and the other right tackle, and the passing game doesn't help too much with this running game, but at the end of the day, Alvin Kamara, having him there just pushes this Saints team to my number 2 ranked spot here on my rankings, which means at the number 1 spot, like they have been really in most of my rankings that I've done for the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons have the best running back group in this division. Last year, they produced the 9th ranked rushing attack, about 127 yards per game, and about a total of 2,159 yards on the ground as well. Coming from these two guys, not as many options maybe as the Saints or the Panthers, but the production is just that much better. They complement each other very well. Bijan Robinson can do a little bit of everything, honestly, and then Tyler Algier almost as well can do a bit of everything, but maybe not at the level and execution that Bijan Robinson can. Both of them are very young as well. Bijan now going into his 2nd year, and Tyler Algier will be in his 3rd year. So you have 2 young running backs in there that, one, you're not paying a lot of money to, and also you can have them right at the start of their career really try to overdo it and get the most out of their abilities in that running game. But as I mentioned before, with the Falcons and having them integrate a new offense and integrate a new system here in 2024 with Raheem Morris and their new offensive coordinator. I'm interested to see how they use these two. Arthur Smith used them a ton last year, and that's why you didn't really get too much balance with the running game and passing game last year. That's why Drake London and maybe Kyle Pitts didn't see the amount of attention and targets that most people wanted them to see. Of course, the quarterback situation also didn't help with that. So now are Raheem Morris and this offense going to go in a little bit different direction? Are they maybe going to lean more on the pass and get them some more touches rather than these running backs? That could be a mistake. Their offensive line isn't the problem. It isn't something where your offensive line can't run block or can't pass block and you have to do the other one. This offensive line is one of the more underrated groups in the NFL, so whichever way they decide to go, I think will really benefit them. They are very fortunate to have all this talent on the offensive side of the ball. Kirk Cousins also coming in, expected to start, an experienced, reliable quarterback that can throw the ball to these guys. And also, if you don't want to get him hurt or get him hit too much, you have two great options here in the running game. Very exciting for the Falcons to find themselves in this situation when it comes to, reputation and what have they done so far in the league. They are young, so they haven't really built a, extensive resume, but right now, how Bijan started at the start of last year, he dealt with a little bit of injuries, but I think most people will believe that he has all the capabilities, really, of being one of the best running backs in the NFL. And also, Tyler Algier, like most, second options, he is one of the better ones around the NFL as well. The passing contribution was a little bit under my expectations for the Falcons and what I would like to see both of them do. They're definitely capable, especially Bijan Robinson, so I'd like to see them be more involved that way through screens or just little dump-offs as well. Most of the time they're going to have a linebacker on them, so I would take either of these guys in that matchup. The Falcons have a lot of different ways they can go here, and that is what comes with having such a great, young, explosive offense that they have there in Atlanta. I'm excited to see it. I'm sure they are heavy favorites along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to take that division, but in terms of running backs, the Falcons take the crown once again in this division. Let me know what you guys think of my rankings. Do you agree the Falcons are number one? Do you think I made a mistake maybe elsewhere? Leave it in the live chat box or in the comments section after this show goes off the air. But that'll do it for my rankings. That'll do it for this segment as well. And we're going to go to another break. When we return, two more topics to talk about on today's show. Jalen Hurts, his comments about the new Philadelphia Eagles offense and how he's sort of adapting to that. Plus, the preseason schedule came out last Friday. We're going to talk about that, what games are on national TV, and what games I'm looking forward to tuning into during the preseason. A couple more stories to get to. We're going to be right back in a few seconds after this next break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Jumping back into the show and into the second to last segment on today's episode, Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles, probably one of the better teams, or the team that got the best in this offseason. Adding a guy like Saquon Barkley to your offense, just to the team in general, I think just boosts you tremendously in the expectations now people have for you, but also just in the expectations this team can have for itself. Last year, it obviously didn't end great. That loss to Tampa Bay down there in Tampa really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. You move on from Jason Kelce, or he moves on, he retires, and also Fletcher Cox retires as well. So you sort of turn a chapter here in this journey for the Philadelphia Eagles, and also the turnaround from the coordinators they also hired this offseason. We talked a little bit about both of them a couple of episodes ago, but I wanted to highlight their new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore here. They hired him this offseason to replace Brian Johnson, and some of their biggest issues you saw last year from a guy like Brian Johnson, you don't want to throw too much on him, too much of the blame on him, but at the same time, with a guy that's very young, a little inexperienced really to come in and handle the expectations that the Eagles have in themselves and in the seasons that they always do, to handle all those personalities and all the big name players they have on that offense. I think it's a tall task for a lot of people, but especially for a young coach to handle it all. I think that's sort of where the issues lied with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Some of their other bigger issues on the field were just being on the same page. It seemed like there was a lot of confusion on Jalen Hurts throwing it somewhere and a receiver running a different direction, or just not being on the same page there. A lot of false starts, not knowing the snap count and things of that nature. The red zone success rate was very alarming. They'd always get there. They'd always have and build these great drives, but they just couldn't capitalize. And they'd always end up with 3 points instead of 7. And also the decision making from Jalen Hurts as well. He had a down year last year. It wasn't his greatest showing, and that again could do with some of the coordinators maybe not being on the same page or just not giving them enough options to make the right choice. Of course, it falls a lot on Jalen Hurts. You don't want to exclude him from taking any of the blame, but that goes almost hand in hand when you're drawing up game plans each and every week. But now, Jalen Hurts talked about this new offense and how he's sort of learning this whole process through moving on from Shane Steichen over to Brian Johnson, and now you bring in another new guy in Kellen Moore. It's a lot to throw away, really, and soak up in the moment in the offseason. I guess Jalen Hurts has done it already twice now to feel a little bit more comfortable with it, but it is just a lot of new information to learn. And Jalen Hurts on that topic mentioned that right now it's been a lot of new inventory in the majority of it, probably 95% of it being new. Again, in that situation, we are only in June. To talk about 95%, I don't think many other teams and many other quarterbacks really feel that they have it all down to about 50% of it being new. Most quarterbacks and offenses find themselves in a similar situation, but with Jalen Hurts, 95% of it being new, that is probably what you'd expect with a new offensive coordinator coming in. And maybe for some fans, that is something you would want, to just completely get away from that offense you saw in 2023 and start new. It is a lot to learn, but for Jalen Hurts, it does benefit him that he has done it already in the past. And also, with it being so brand new and that being the case, reports coming out so far from the OTAs and mandatory minicamp have the defense in a lot of favorable situations. It seems like the defense has been looking a lot smoother and having the upper hand so far in these practices for the Philadelphia Eagles in 7-on-7s and in 11-on-11s as well. It is odd just because I thought it would be the other way around. I really thought this offense was just not going to click right away, but because you have so much talent just coming out of everywhere, whenever you look at this offense, I thought the defense was going to struggle a little bit more because they also have a new coordinator, and the skill level, I think it's fair to say, isn't equal on both sides of the ball, but that's just me. In my estimation, I was pretty surprised to read that with some of the reports coming out of their practices, but again, we are only in June before anything really starts to be taken seriously. We are getting closer to the serious part, but for right now, the defense has the upper hand. And now, before a break until training camp, Hurts is really just believing that this won't be any different than last year, trying to learn this offense. He has done it before, he expects to learn it, and he does feel pretty confident about his ability to succeed with this new offensive coordinator. As he put it in his own words, I think that's kind of a credit to, again, the lack of continuity with that, it being a thing where I kind of had to take all these new things and new voices and still go out there and be successful and efficient. I think that's exactly what's going to happen again this year. It's hard to argue with them, when a guy's done it one or twice already, to believe he can't do it again. It is just a little bit foolish, a little bit naive there, but it's certainly going to be a challenge not only with that new playbook, new offense, but trying to integrate Saquon Barkley, how he feels, the level of comfortability he feels in this offense and how they include him, because he's certainly a guy you want to use and want to get the most out of, but also using A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert as well. It really makes you think now, really question what do the Eagles really have as their biggest weakness, their biggest hurdle now to get over in this year? Because in terms of team building and addressing all the positions that you needed to, I don't think anybody or not many teams did it as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. That is something that Howie Roseman is known for, not really dilly-dallying, not really messing around with anything too much. If he sees a problem, he'll address it, and that has played out very well to their benefit in trading for A.J. Brown, not being overly eager in the NFL draft, and still ending up with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, addressing the cornerback situation as well. You have a linebacker issue, go out and sign Devin White, one of the better ones around the NFL. On the offensive line, a little bit tricky still. You have the pieces there. You have to see how they perform, but you aren't shorthanded there is what I'm trying to say. And then you want to get even better on offense. You bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley to really make that offense as full and as high-powered as you could possibly think of. And now, what is their biggest hurdle? Probably just learning the playbook, honestly, and getting Jalen Hurts to really become this leader, to transition and translate the new language over to the offense. Of course, they have to all do their part, but it is also really much a lot on Jalen Hurts' plate to go out and learn it once again, go out there and translate it out to his teammates, and that way it'll be a successful season for the Eagles. I truly believe that. It's hard for me to point out to any other weaknesses for them at this point. Certainly not too many on offense. If you really want to get specific and nitpicky a little bit, maybe the center to right guard dynamic, who's going to fill into those spots, but that isn't something to really worry about too much. They have Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson in there, Landon Dickerson as well. Three of the better linemen at their positions in the NFL, so that's something really to not sweat about too much in my opinion. Defensively, maybe, but again, they address so many positions, and it's hard to think that it isn't just going to turn out again for them, especially now having a more experienced voice in there in Vic Fangio. I have a lot of confidence in them to get it done. And you look at just their competition, just playing in the NFC East, I think the team that solidified themselves and really 100% got better is the Washington Commanders, funny enough. Maybe they're not at the level, definitely not at the level of the Philadelphia Eagles, but they played them tough over the last few years, and I'm not saying they're going to really compete for them for this division, because even though they played them tough, the Eagles finished, I want to say, second or first in their division, and the Commanders probably finished third or last, so with a losing record. So it isn't something to really put too much stock into, but they, at the end of the day, got better. It is a work in progress with them, whereas the Cowboys, I don't think you could really say they got better. They hardly signed anybody, and then you look at the New York Giants as well. You're not getting better if you're giving up Saquon Barkley to a division rival in the Eagles. So the Eagles really have done a lot of good things in this offseason, and it just comes down to them really executing and learning this offense under Kellen Moore and trying to be as successful as they can. I have confidence in Jalen Hurts in doing so. He had a bad season last year, so I think he'll rebound this year, and the Eagles could be another prominent figure in the conference. You have the 49ers, the Packers, the Lions, all these teams competing in there. The Eagles fell short last year, so that was a shame to not see them go any further, but it's just going to raise the competition, and I think that's always good and an exciting thing for us fans to watch in and during the NFL season. But that is that segment. That is how the Eagles are shaping up for the 2024 year. We have one more segment to get to after this break. We're going to talk about the preseason schedule announcement and what games I'm looking forward to the most to sort of get me geared up for the start of the 2024 season. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back to talk about the preseason after this break. Thank you for joining me back here on the last segment of today's show to talk about the preseason here a little bit. We are in mandatory minicamp. We could start looking a little bit forward to the NFL preseason. At the start of the preseason, the NFL released their entire preseason schedule last Friday to start it. So with that announcement being now out there to the public, we can talk about how the first preseason game officially will be on August the 1st on a Thursday. This will be the Hall of Fame game between the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans on ESPN and ABC, too short to kick off the preseason games. Week 1 doesn't officially start until that following Thursday on August the 8th, and then you're going to have a cycle of games going through every Thursday through Sunday up until August 25th, which is another Sunday in that month. And a very short period of preseason, really giving it about 2 weeks before the official start of the regular season for the NFL. But there are still some intriguing games that do catch my eye here that I wanted to talk about a little bit with you guys here today. A lot of games on national TV that are pretty exciting before I mention my games that I'm really interested in. The New Orleans Saints will be playing at the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday, August the 18th on Fox at 8 p.m. That'll be an interesting one with how the 49ers look. Will Brandon Ayuk still be in this cycle of, I want a new contract with the 49ers not giving it to him? Maybe they'll raise that $25 million per year mark that they're currently stuck at. But that'll be interesting, certainly, for how the 49ers maybe are moving on at that point of the regular season. So that's one game. Then you have the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Cincinnati to play against them again on a Thursday on August 22nd on Amazon Prime at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Indianapolis and Cincinnati, you'd want to get Joe Burrow out there a little bit more warmed up for the start of the regular season. Hopefully we get to see a few drives of Joe Burrow out there. Anthony Richardson, how is he looking with his shoulder rehab from the injury he sustained last year? This new Colts offense, A.D. Mitchell, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Jonathan Taylor also back there as well. How all of them look at this point of the preseason schedule, that'll be exciting to watch and keep an eye out for. That'll be on national television for everyone to enjoy. Then you have the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Denver on Sunday, August the 25th at 4:30 p.m. on CBS. Another intriguing one just because the Broncos, by this time on August 25th, you'd like to have an idea of who their starting quarterback will be. I think that'll be pretty telling on who starts that game, who comes in after that, and how that whole dynamic works with them gearing up for the season. And also for the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison, how much does he play of the preseason and how much does Kyler play? Can we see some few exciting plays out of that new dynamic duo? I think that'll be very exciting to watch. And then on that same Sunday, later in the day, August 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC, you have the New England Patriots traveling to Washington and playing the Commanders. That is actually one of the games that drew my interest, that made the list for me. The New England Patriots, you have the second overall pick and the third overall pick playing against each other potentially in that preseason game. Depending on who wins that starting job, most likely will be Jacoby Brissett, but you'll have some gameplay of Drake May out there towards the tail end of the preseason, so you'd hopefully see some growth there, some improvement over the first couple of weeks of preseason. Then for Jaden Daniels, he will be in a very developed process by now, hopefully learning this offense, and hopefully it looks a little bit smoother by this point and seeing how he clicks with the offense, how he's running it, and just how smooth that transition is from getting the play, getting it out there to the guys, and just executing it at a high level. This is what the preseason's for. This is what the greatest benefits are for a young quarterback who you're putting a lot on their plate, in all honesty, to go out there and practice it. It's going to be very exciting to watch. Hopefully they get to see each other or just play against each other a few drives there before they eventually get pulled out like it is typical to do. But that is the first game that drew my interest. The second one is the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Chargers on Saturday, August 10th. Jim Harbaugh, really his first opportunity in live gameplay action in the preseason to see what this new identity looks like for the Los Angeles Chargers. You want to get, hopefully, you probably won't see Justin Herbert out there, in all honesty. for the first game, but just an idea, a positive feeling you can take away from that. Even if you win or lose, I don't think that really matters here in the preseason. I think Jim Harbaugh's just hoping to see things get executed right, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but if they're following the game plan and doing everything right, not too many penalties or confusions out there, it's going to be exciting to see how this Chargers offense now looks, and also for the Seattle Seahawks, where they are with their new head coach, Geno Smith, still there as their quarterback. Probably going to be their quarterback for this year, but there were some earlier reports that had some doubts around that whole situation. It'll be good competition here for the Chargers and the Seahawks in this game. Then you look at a further game, the Los Angeles Rams, again against the Los Angeles Chargers, that following Saturday on August the 17th. The Rams, this time to start with them, they're very young and exciting defense. Obviously, Aaron Donald moves on and retires this year. You'd want to see how far along this defense is to not really replacing him, because there's really no replacing Aaron Donald, but with guys in there like Jared Verse, who you drafted in the first round, Braden Fisk as well in the second round. Both of those guys going to Florida State University, now getting the chance to play at the highest level together on that defensive line, I think is great. Going along with Kobe Turner and Bryce Young, it's going to be very young and exciting defense to watch, and hopefully they're out there by this time to get in as many reps as possible. And again, the Los Angeles Chargers, seeing now Joe Alt out there, and maybe you get a one-on-one battle there against Jared Verse, which will be very exciting, even for a few reps, just seeing how Joe Alt goes up against Jared Verse or Braden Fisk or anybody at this level will be something to take note on, how successful he is, how he learns from it. That'll be a crucial piece to this puzzle that the Los Angeles Chargers want to work out for. And then the last game on my schedule here, a little bit to pick out, and the games I'm really looking forward to are the Detroit Lions at the New York Giants there on Thursday, August the 8th. Really, I'm looking forward to watching Terrion Arnold go up against Malik Neighbors. Hopefully, they're both playing at this game. It is the first official week of the preseason, so we might not see too much of them, if any at all, but I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully, both of them are out there trying to get their feet wet as possible before the start of the regular season. Terrion Arnold, my best cornerback in the entire draft, and Malik Neighbors up there for a lot of people as the best wide receiver in the draft. If we could see a play or two of them going up against each other, I think will be must-see TV. Again, still in the preseason, but that'll be a very exciting matchup that we could see for years to come when it is obviously in the regular season. Both of them in the same conference as well, so that's even more exciting. But how Daniel Jones looks as well, how this Detroit Lions defense also looks, and their offense going into this new year with all these expectations on their shoulders now will be something to certainly watch, but I'm really looking forward to that matchup between the both of them. Some other interesting notes from the schedule: no J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix on the national TV schedule, where I feel like all the other top 5, top 10 picks got a lot of national attention, or at least got a game or two in there. We won't see any J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix on that schedule, and also some late primetime games. Hopefully we could see some more starters out there, potentially just to see a little bit more competition and a higher level of football out there. But who is still holding out by this time is also something else to mention. I mentioned it a little bit before with Brandon Ayuk as one of the games on national television. By the time the preseason, rolls out of here and you're on to August 27th, 28th, and really just towards the tail end of August, who is still in these holdout positions, who is still trying to vie for a contract extension, who is in a good spot with their organization, who is in a worse spot, and how these organizations could really just change through trades and things like that will be something else to watch out for through the preseason. If you get a better understanding of it, maybe you think, hey, maybe I could trade this guy, and maybe we are better at this position than I originally thought, so we can maybe ship this guy out and gain something from it rather than losing him in free agency next year. But though that is the preseason schedule, that is some of the things I'm looking more towards to as that inches closer and closer. With that and getting all that stuff out of the way, that does conclude this episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I want to thank you guys all for tuning into this episode, and please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. Make sure to also follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok for more of this network's content. If you want to see more of me and this show, check out the GSMC Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel on YouTube for a lot more content out there around the NFL and just football in general. As a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more football conversations and NFL discussions with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thank you guys again for joining me, and I'll see you guys all back here again tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.